What kind of man returns a wallet holding $40,000 when his own daughter cannot afford the medicine she needs to breathe? On a rain-soaked night in Seattle, Luke Dawson walked into a luxury hotel wearing a faded work jacket, carrying a pharmacy bag in one hand and a powerful CEO's wallet in the other. The cash was untouched. The suspicion was not. Evelyn Hart believed she was protecting herself when she decided to follow him. What she found beyond the glass towers and polished marble would force her to question everything she believed about honesty, dignity, power, and love. This is more than a story about lost money. It is about what happens when a good man is judged by his poverty and when one woman finally sees the truth. Watch closely. Like the video and tell us where you are watching from. 8 hours earlier, the rain had not yet reached Seattle. Morning pressed a pale gray light against the windows of a second-floor apartment in South Park. The building stood beside a closed tire shop and an alley where water gathered in broken pavement. Inside apartment 2B, an old heater clicked twice, groaned, and went silent. Luke Dawson lay beneath the kitchen sink with one arm buried behind a rusted pipe. "Try it now," he called. At the table, Grace leaned across her cereal and turned the thermostat. Nothing happened. She looked toward the cabinet. Only Luke's boots were visible. "I think it is still mad at us. It is not mad. It sounds mad." Luke shifted, struck his shoulder, and muttered something too low for her to hear. Grace smiled. Was that an apology? It was a professional discussion, with the heater, with several parts of the building. He slid out and sat on the floor, dark hair falling over his forehead. At 39, Luke carried exhaustion in quiet places, around his eyes, in the careful way he stood, in the extra second he sometimes needed before smiling. Grace wore a red winter coat over purple pajamas. Luke noticed. "You can take the coat off in a minute. I am not cold. Your teeth are arguing with you. That must run in Mom's family." A photograph stood on top of the refrigerator. Luke was younger in it. His wife Rachel leaned against his shoulder with sunlight in her hair. Grace sat between them as a toddler, laughing at something beyond the frame. Luke looked at it for only a moment. Then he tightened a connection inside the heater and pressed the switch. The machine rattled. Warm air moved through the vent. Grace raised both hands. "He forgave us. He needed boundaries." Luke stood, but her sudden cough stopped him. It began softly, then tightened through her chest. Her spoon struck the table. Luke crossed the room before the next breath. Slow. He placed the rescue inhaler in her hand. Grace knew the routine. She sat straight, sealed her lips around the spacer, and breathed in. Luke crouched beside her. His face remained calm. Only his fingers gave him away. They locked around the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. Grace took another breath. The tightness eased. "Better." She nodded. Before putting the inhaler away, Luke checked the counter printed on the side. 23 doses remained. He wrote the number on the back of an old grocery receipt and tucked it into the medicine envelope. Then he checked the date on the inhaler twice, as if the second look might change it. Grace watched him. "Dr. Chen said I could use it when I need it. I know. You count everything. That is because numbers behave better when someone watches them." "Do people?" Luke glanced at the unpaid bills near the refrigerator. "Not usually." Grace returned to her star, but Luke stayed beside her until the color returned fully to her face. 4 envelopes lay beside Luke's coffee. Rent, medicine, school lunch, Christmas. He removed $80 from his wallet. 40 went into medicine, 20 went into rent. He stared at the last 20, then took another bill from Christmas and added both to rent. Grace lowered her eyes to the paper star she was coloring. Luke knew she had seen. "What are those for?" he asked. The tree. Their Christmas tree stood beside the leaking window. It was less than 3 feet tall and missing branches on one side. A silver ribbon circled it twice. "It looks lonely," Grace said. "The tree has us." She considered that. "Then it is not lonely." Luke kissed the top of her head. His phone rang. The pharmacy number appeared on the screen. He stepped toward the window before answering. The specialist medication was ready, but insurance had not approved it. The clinic had also requested help through the Hartwell Children's Foundation. That request remained under review. Luke looked at the medicine envelope. "How long does a review take? I cannot say," the pharmacist replied. She has already waited 12 days. I understand. The gentleness in her voice made the news worse. The out-of-pocket cost is $2,860. Luke closed his eyes. Behind him, Grace kept coloring. Can you hold it until Friday for 48 hours? I will figure something out. When the call ended, Luke placed both hands on the sink. Dad. He turned on the faucet and rinsed grease from his fingers. Yeah, bug is the medicine coming. They are working on it. That means no. It means grown people enjoy making simple things complicated. Grace studied him. Will I be okay? Luke knelt beside her. You are going to school. You are going to Ruth's afterward. Tonight you are going to complain because I made soup again. You always make soup. Exactly. Everything is under control. She touched his cheek. You do not look under control. Luke smiled. That is because I have not had coffee. She accepted the answer because she loved him. He hated himself a little for needing her to. Luke packed his toolbox. Beneath the wrenches lay a rolled set of engineering plans. Columbia River Emergency Support Redesign, lead structural engineer Luke Dawson. A newspaper clipping showed him 9 years earlier beside a repaired highway overpass, clean-shaven and wearing a new work coat. The headline called him one of the region's rising young engineers. The clipping had once lived in a frame on his office wall. Now it traveled beneath screwdrivers and voltage testers because Luke could not bring himself to throw it away. His engineering license had expired 2 years earlier. Renewing it required fees, continuing education, and hours he had spent in clinics, insurance offices, and waiting rooms. Sometimes, when a repair required more thought than force, the old part of him returned. He could still see load paths, weak joints, and the hidden reason a structure failed. Then the job ended, someone handed him cash, and he became the maintenance man again. Grace had never known him as anything else. She entered with her backpack. Luke closed the toolbox, ready. She looked at Rachel's photograph. Did Mom like Christmas? She loved it. More than you. Your mother once put lights around the bathroom mirror. Why? She said people deserve to feel festive while brushing their teeth. Grace laughed. For a moment, the apartment felt warmer than the heater could explain. The Harbor Light Diner sat 6 blocks from the clinic between a laundromat and a fishing store. Its red sign had lost 2 letters, so at night it read, Harbor Lig Tea. Ruth Palmer stood behind the counter pouring coffee when Luke and Grace entered. You are late, she said. By 2 minutes. A man can ruin his life in 2 minutes. Luke looked at the nearly empty diner. Is that why the pie is from Tuesday? Ruth pointed the coffee pot at him. Keep talking and find somewhere else to leave your child. Grace slipped onto a stool. You would miss me. Yes, him I could replace. Ruth placed a wrapped breakfast sandwich on Luke's toolbox. I did not order this. You fixed my freezer. You paid me. I underpaid you. That sounds like a business problem. Grace quietly put the sandwich inside Luke's jacket pocket. Ruth smiled. Smart child. Luke checked Grace's inhaler and kissed her forehead. Where are you working? Ruth asked. 2 apartment calls, then the Crown Meridian. The hotel downtown heating control failure. $450 if I finish before midnight. Ruth's eyes moved toward Grace. That does not cover the medication. It covers part of it. And the rest Friday is still coming. Ruth hated that answer. She did not challenge it in front of Grace. Instead, she handed Luke a coffee. After he left, Grace watched his truck disappear. He is worried, she said. What makes you think that he makes more jokes when he is worried? Across downtown, Evelyn Hart stood alone in a kitchen made of glass white stone and silence. The penthouse looked over Elliott Bay. The dining table had 12 chairs. Only one place had been set. Evelyn drank coffee while reviewing the Hartwell Children's Foundation report. 27 emergency medical grants had been delayed during the past month. 9 involved children with respiratory or cardiac conditions. She opened the first file. Finance authorization required. The next file showed the same notice. Her phone rang. Marcus Vale. Why are emergency grants waiting for finance approval, she asked. Temporary compliance review. Why was I not told it was in last week's supplementary appendix? I read the packet. Then you know no one is being denied care. The applications say pending. That is not denial. To a parent waiting for medicine, there may not be a difference. Marcus paused. You cannot carry every family personally, Evelyn. I am asking why the fund is not doing what it exists to do. I will have an update before tomorrow's board meeting. He changed the subject to the donor dinner at the Crown Meridian. Updated financial projections would be placed on an encrypted drive in her wallet before she left. Why my wallet? Because you forget your briefcase. I forgot it once. 3 times. Evelyn almost smiled. Marcus had a way of turning control into concern. At Hartwell Tower, a young analyst named Melissa Grant waited outside the Foundation conference room holding several folders. Evelyn stopped. Are you working on the delayed grants? Yes, ma'am. Why are they delayed? Melissa's fingers tightened. There are inconsistencies in the vendor reserve accounts. The conference room door opened. Marcus entered. I already handled it. Melissa lowered her eyes. Marcus took the folders from her. You can leave these with me. After she walked away, Evelyn faced him. What was she going to tell me? The same thing I told you, timing issues. She said vendor reserves, accounting language. It sounds dramatic because accountants are lonely people. Evelyn did not laugh. Bring her to tomorrow's meeting. Of course. Luke spent the afternoon repairing what other people had stopped noticing. He fixed a valve for an elderly man who paid him in cash and apples. He replaced a broken outlet in an apartment where 3 children did homework beneath one lamp. At 5:30, he sat in his truck and counted $210. $100 went into medicine, $50 went into rent. The rest had to cover fuel and food. A photograph from Ruth appeared on his phone. Grace sat in a booth wearing a paper crown. Purple stars hung behind her. Then a pharmacy reminder covered the image. Prescription hold expires in 48 hours. At 7:15, Luke returned to the diner. Grace ran to him. I have one more job, he said. I know. I should be back before you fall asleep. You said that last time. I was back. You carried me from Ruth's car. That counts. Grace looked at the rain beginning to mark the windows. Will you be careful? Luke zipped her coat. Always. Ruth offered to keep Grace until closing, then take her home. Luke hesitated. Grace touched his sleeve. I like Ruth's couch. No one likes my couch, Ruth said. It smells like cinnamon. That is not a reason to trust furniture. Luke looked at Ruth. Thank you. She pushed him toward the door. Go earn your money. The Crown Meridian rose above downtown Seattle in gold light and black glass. Luke entered through the service garage carrying his toolbox. A supervisor led him to a failed heating control on the 20th floor. You have until 11:45. What happens after that? Guests complain. At the exact minute at these prices they believe they can. Luke opened the panel. A relay had burned through part of the board. He could not simply replace it. He would have to rebuild the connection by hand. Upstairs, Evelyn moved through a donor dinner in a navy dress and a composed smile. People thanked her for helping children. Cameras flashed beside photographs of smiling families. Evelyn thought about the 27 delayed applications. Marcus appeared with 2 glasses. You look troubled. I am thinking. That is rarely useful at a donor dinner. Where is Melissa homesick? She was at work this morning. She became ill. Evelyn held his gaze. Across the ballroom, someone called her name. She turned. Marcus watched her walk away. In the service corridor outside the ballroom, Melissa stood near the elevators with her coat over one arm. Marcus intercepted her before she could leave. You will not attend tomorrow's meeting, he said. Her face lost color. Ms. Hart asked for me. You are unwell. I am not. Marcus stepped closer, still smiling. You copied restricted records without approval. Go home, Melissa. Consider whether you want this to become a legal matter. The elevator opened. Melissa looked past him toward the ballroom where Evelyn was surrounded by donors and cameras. Then she entered the elevator without speaking. Marcus waited until the doors closed before returning to Evelyn. At 11:10, he entered the coat room while Evelyn spoke with 2 board members. Her wallet rested inside her coat. Marcus removed it and carried it into a service corridor. He placed a silver drive behind her identification. The drive contained vendor ledgers and payment records Melissa had collected before Marcus removed her access. By morning, he needed the board to believe the files had been compromised by an outsider. His phone displayed the temporary contractor working near level 3. Luke Dawson. No permanent employee record. Medical debt. Past due rent. Marcus knew enough to make the rest believable. He sent a message to the garage supervisor. Leave level 3, booth unattended from 11:15 to 11:35, security test. Then he carried the wallet into the garage and placed it beside Evelyn's town car. At 11:19, Luke restored the heating system. Warm air moved through the vents. The supervisor checked his watch. "You made it. Payment will process Friday." Luke looked up. "I was told tonight. Accounting processes contractors on Friday. I need it tonight." The supervisor's expression changed as though Luke's need had become an inconvenience. "I do not control accounting." Luke closed his toolbox. Of course not. He called the contractor from the elevator. Voicemail. When the doors opened into the garage, rainwater dripped from overhead pipes. The level was nearly empty. Luke walked toward his truck. Near a black town car, something lay beside the rear tire. A wallet. He looked toward the security booth. Empty. Luke picked it up and opened it far enough to find identification. Then he saw the cash. 4 thick bands of $100 bills. For one suspended moment, the garage became silent. Luke saw Grace at the kitchen table wearing her winter coat. He heard the pharmacist say $2,860. He thought about rent school lunches and the nearly empty Christmas envelope. His thumb rested against the first band. $40,000 could buy the medicine. It could save the apartment, repair the truck, and place presents beneath the crooked little tree. No one was watching. At least Luke believed no one was watching. He closed the wallet. Evelyn Hart's identification sat inside the clear sleeve. Above him, her name appeared in gold letters throughout the hotel. Luke waited at the empty booth. No guard returned. He looked at his truck, then at the elevator. Rain struck the open side of the garage in silver sheets. Luke placed the wallet in both hands and walked back toward the hotel. The elevator doors opened onto marble music and chandelier light. Marcus Vale was already standing beside Evelyn Hart. When his eyes settled on the wallet in Luke's hands, he did not look surprised. Marcus Vale was already standing beside Evelyn Hart. When his eyes settled on the wallet in Luke's hands, he did not look surprised. He looked ready. "You stole from the wrong woman," he said. The words cracked across the lobby. A pianist near the bar stopped in the middle of a song. 2 guests turned from the concierge desk. A bellman froze beside a tower of luggage wrapped in gold ribbon. Luke stood beneath the chandelier with rain darkening his shoulders and water gathering around his boots. He placed the wallet on the front desk. "I found it in the garage." One security guard moved closer. Marcus reached for the wallet, but Evelyn took it first. The leather was cold and wet. She opened it. The money was still there. 4 bands of $100 bills untouched. Her private cards remained in their sleeves. The silver drive sat behind her identification. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. $40,000 confidential files, and he carried it straight into the executive lobby. Luke's gaze shifted toward him. Where else was I supposed to take it? The security booth. No one was there. Marcus looked at the guard. The guard lowered his eyes. Evelyn studied Luke. His jacket was old but clean. His hands were rough, the knuckles split from cold and work. He held a white pharmacy bag beneath one arm as if he feared someone might take it. "Where did you find this?" she asked. "Level 3, beside the rear tire of a black town car." The answer was exact. Too exact, Marcus seemed to think. Evelyn remembered stepping from that same car earlier. "Did you open it?" "Yes." Marcus gave a quiet laugh. Luke did not look at him. "I opened it to find a name, and the cash," Evelyn asked. "I saw it. Did you count it?" "No." Marcus stepped closer. "You expect us to believe that?" Luke's face remained still. "You asked what happened. I told you." A woman near the elevators lifted her phone. The camera pointed toward Luke. He noticed. His shoulders tightened. Marcus noticed that too. "Maybe we should call the police and let them decide." Luke looked at Evelyn. "Am I being accused of something?" Marcus answered before she could. "You were found with executive property containing $40,000. I was not found with it. I brought it back. You opened it. To find the owner. And now you want a reward." Luke glanced down at the pharmacy bag. The movement lasted less than a second, but Evelyn saw it. "How much?" Marcus asked. Luke looked back at him. "Nothing. No one returns $40,000 for nothing. It was not mine." The lobby seemed to grow quieter. Evelyn had spent years listening to people defend themselves. Most used too many words. They spoke quickly, added details no one requested, and tried to fill silence before suspicion could settle. Luke did none of that. He stood in wet work clothes beneath a chandelier worth more than his apartment building and waited. Marcus tapped one finger against the wallet. Men do not walk into places like this at midnight unless they want something. Luke's expression changed. Not much. Only enough for Evelyn to understand that Marcus had finally reached him. "My daughter is waiting for me." He placed his driver's license on the desk. "Copy whatever you need, then let me go." The security guard photographed the license. Luke took it back. Evelyn should have thanked him. The words reached her throat but stopped there. Luke saw the hesitation. His eyes cooled. He turned toward the doors. The woman near the elevator kept recording as he walked away. Outside, rain swept across the valet lane. Luke pulled his jacket closed and crossed toward an old blue pickup parked beneath a broken light. Marcus stood beside Evelyn. You cannot seriously believe him. She watched Luke try the engine. It failed once. Then again. On the third attempt, the truck started. He returned everything she said. That is what he wanted you to see. Evelyn looked down at the silver drive. Marcus lowered his voice. Run his name. Medical debt, criminal record, employment history. We should know who touched this. He did not take anything. You do not know that. Luke's truck moved toward the exit. The pharmacy bag sat on the passenger seat. Evelyn handed the wallet to no one. She walked outside. Ben Carter waited beside her sedan with an umbrella. Ms. Hart, get in. Marcus followed them through the doors. Where are you going? Evelyn opened the rear door. Home. Marcus looked toward Luke's disappearing truck. You are going the wrong direction. Evelyn closed the door. Ben entered the driver's seat. Follow the blue pickup. His eyes found hers in the mirror. Did he take something I do not know? That was not my question. Evelyn watched the truck turn south. Keep 2 cars between us. Ben pulled away from the curb. Seattle moved around them in wet reflections. Office towers rose above dark streets. Christmas lights shimmered across puddles. Luke's truck traveled without urgency. He stopped fully at every light and signaled before every turn. At one intersection, a dog wandered into the road. Luke waited until it reached the sidewalk. Ben glanced at Evelyn. He does not drive like a man running. He may know he is being followed. Do you? Evelyn looked at him. Know why you are doing this? She turned toward the window. The city changed as they moved south. Glass towers gave way to warehouses, old apartment blocks, and stores with metal gates pulled over their windows. Luke turned beneath a red emergency sign. Rainier Children's Clinic. Evelyn sat forward. He parked near the side entrance. For several seconds, he remained inside the truck. Then he stepped out, carrying the pharmacy bag. Before walking toward the clinic, he placed both hands on the roof and lowered his head. He did not move. Rain ran down the back of his jacket. Ben slowed near the curb. Do you want me to keep going? Evelyn watched Luke lift his face and enter the clinic. I should. Ben waited. Evelyn opened the door. The clinic smelled of disinfectant wet coats and coffee that had been sitting too long. A television played a cartoon with the volume low. A woman slept in a plastic chair with a child curled against her side. Luke stood at the billing desk. Evelyn stopped near the corner of a hallway where he could not see her. The clerk behind the desk wore tired eyes and a blue sweater beneath her uniform. I picked up the rescue inhaler, Luke said. The pharmacy said the new prescription still needs approval. The clerk searched the screen. The insurance appeal is pending. What about the foundation request? She hesitated. It is still under review. Luke looked down. How long I wish I could tell you. She has been waiting almost 2 weeks. I know. The doctor marked it urgent. The clerk pressed her lips together. Without approval, the cost is $2,860. Luke did not move. For 1 month, yes. He opened the pharmacy bag. Inside was a single inhaler. Can I pay part tonight? The pharmacy will not release it that way. Luke removed a folded envelope from his jacket. The paper had softened along the creases. I have $612. The clerk's face changed. Not pity, recognition. The look of someone who had watched too many people arrive with careful numbers and leave with nothing. I am sorry, Mr. Dawson. Luke folded the envelope again. I understand. A small voice came from down the hallway. Dad Luke turned. Grace stood beside a nurse wearing purple pajamas beneath her coat. Her stuffed fox hung from one hand. Luke's whole face softened. He crossed the hall and crouched in front of her. "Hey, Bug." Grace looked at the pharmacy bag. "Did they give you the medicine?" Luke lifted it slightly. "They gave us what we need tonight." Grace studied him. Evelyn could not tell whether the child believed him. Perhaps belief was not the point. Perhaps Grace understood that her father needed her to accept the answer. The nurse handed Luke a sheet of instructions. "Her breathing is stable. Keep the rescue inhaler close. If the tightness returns or she cannot speak clearly, bring her back." Luke nodded. "Dr. Chen will call the insurance company again in the morning. You said that last week." The words came out harder than he intended. The nurse did not flinch. "I know." Luke rubbed one hand over his face. "I am sorry. You do not have to apologize for being scared." His eyes moved toward Grace. "Yes, I do." Evelyn's fingers closed around the wallet inside her coat. $40,000 pressed against her side. Luke lifted Grace into his arms. She rested her head against his shoulder. "Were you scared?" he asked. "Only a little. That is brave." "Were you?" Luke smiled. "Only a little." Evelyn stepped back before he could see her. She reached the lobby first and stood beside a vending machine pretending to read the labels. Luke carried Grace past her. He did not look in her direction. Outside, Ben watched him place Grace in the truck and wrap a blanket around her before closing the door. Evelyn returned to the sedan. Ben waited until Luke pulled away. "You found what you were looking for?" "No." "What did you find?" Evelyn looked down at her hands. "I do not know yet." They followed Luke east. His truck entered a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and houses leaned toward one another as if sharing the weight of winter. He parked outside a faded brick apartment building beside a tire shop. Luke carried Grace up an exterior staircase. A yellow light buzzed above the second floor. He struggled with the key while balancing her against one shoulder. The door opened. Warm light spilled onto the landing. Evelyn's sedan stopped across the street. "You should not be here," Ben said quietly. "I know." Through a gap in the curtains, Evelyn saw part of the apartment. A narrow kitchen, a small table, a portable heater near a window patched with clear tape. A Christmas tree stood in the corner. It was no taller than Grace and decorated with paper stars. Luke set Grace on a chair and wrapped a blanket around her. He placed a pot on the stove. Grace pointed toward the table. Luke took 4 envelopes from a drawer and laid them beside one another. The words were written in black marker. Rent, medicine, school lunch, Christmas. He opened the rent envelope first, then medicine, then school lunch. The Christmas envelope was nearly flat. Grace watched him count. Dad Luke looked up. "Is Santa still coming?" His hand stopped. "Santa knows our address." "What if we move?" Luke looked toward the envelope marked rent. For 1 second his face emptied. Then he smiled. "He will find the new address, even if it is far, especially then." Grace nodded. Luke turned toward the stove. His shoulders lowered. He pressed one hand over his eyes. Only for a moment. Then he carried 2 bowls to the table and pretended one spoon was too heavy for him to lift. Grace laughed. The sound reached the street through the thin window. Evelyn lowered her window an inch. Cold rain touched her face. Her own penthouse had 6 bathrooms and rooms she entered only when someone cleaned them. Luke's apartment seemed to contain no empty space. Every corner held a need a memory or a small repair waiting for his hands. Ben watched her in the mirror. "Ms. Hart." She closed the window. "Take me home." At the penthouse, Evelyn emptied the wallet onto the kitchen counter. Cards, cash, the silver drive, a photograph of her mother. The bills remained in their bands. She touched one of them. It felt heavier now. Evelyn opened her laptop and signed into the Hartwell Children's Foundation portal. 27 emergency applications waited under finance review. She opened the first, access restricted. The second showed the same notice. She searched for Grace Dawson. The screen displayed a case number, a respiratory medication request, and a red status line. Pending finance authorization. Evelyn clicked for supporting documents. A new window appeared. Marcus Vale Administrator approval required. Her phone vibrated against the counter. A message from Marcus. Board call at 9. Bring the drive. Another message followed. Security is running Luke Dawson's background. Evelyn placed the phone face down. She did not sleep. At 8:30 the next morning, she sat in a back booth at the Harbor Light Diner, wearing dark jeans, a gray sweater, and a baseball cap pulled low over her hair. The place smelled of bacon maple syrup and old wood. Truck drivers sat at the counter. 2 nurses ate toast near the window. A radio played softly from the kitchen. At 8:42, Luke entered carrying his toolbox. He looked more tired in daylight. Ruth called from behind the counter. "Grace, okay. She is home resting. You eating?" "I have coffee." That was not the question. Luke pointed toward the kitchen. "You said the sink was leaking. It is leaking because you have not fixed it." He disappeared behind the swinging door. Evelyn watched him work through the opening. 10 minutes later, a businessman at the counter raised his empty cup. "I have been waiting for a refill." Ruth turned. "I am sorry. We are short this morning. That is not my problem." The room went quiet. Luke stepped from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Coffee is fresh." The man looked at him. "Do you work here?" Luke picked up the pot. "Apparently, I have been promoted." A few people smiled. Luke filled the man's cup, then topped off 3 others. He did not embarrass Ruth. He did not challenge the customer. He simply found the place where tension had broken and repaired it. Evelyn looked down at her untouched breakfast. She placed 10 $100 bills beneath the edge of the plate. At the register, Ruth noticed, "Honey, that is too much. It is for him." Ruth looked toward the kitchen. "Did he ask you? No. Then you should know he will not take it." Evelyn left the money anyway. She reached the door before Luke called after her. "Ms. Hart." She stopped. He stood near the counter holding the bills. Recognition had settled in his face. "You forgot something." "I did not forget it." "Then I cannot take it. You do not know why I left it. I know how it looks. It is not pity." Luke glanced around the diner. Every customer had become deeply interested in plates, cups, and newspapers. "Then do not make it look like pity." Evelyn lowered her voice. "I saw the clinic." His expression hardened. "You followed me inside." "Yes." "And my apartment." "Yes." Ruth moved closer, but Luke raised one hand. His voice remained calm. "That was not your right. I know. No. You know now. Evelyn took the money from him. I wanted to know whether you were lying, and you were not." Luke closed his toolbox. That must be inconvenient. The answer caught her off guard. A small smile touched her mouth. Luke noticed. For one brief second, something in his face softened. Then the rescue inhaler slipped from his jacket pocket and fell between them. Evelyn picked it up. When she handed it back, their fingers touched. Luke withdrew his hand first. "If you truly want to help," he said, "help people without making them stand beneath a light and explain why they deserve it." Evelyn looked at him. "What would that look like? You are the CEO." Luke took his toolbox. "You tell me." He returned to the kitchen. Evelyn stood beside the door with $1,000 in her hand. At Hartwell Tower, she searched Luke's name herself. The first results were ordinary. A contractor license, an old address, a court filing connected to unpaid medical debt. Then she found an archived newspaper article. Luke stood beside a repaired overpass wearing a hard hat and holding a set of plans. He looked younger, rested, almost unrecognizable. The article called him a structural engineer whose redesign had reopened 3 rural roads after severe flooding. Another result appeared. Rachel Dawson killed in highway collision. Child survives. Evelyn read further. Luke had taken repeated leave to care for Grace. He had sold his house. His engineering license had expired. Lawsuits followed the medical debt. Contract work replaced the career he had lost one missed week at a time. There was no scandal, no crime. Only a man pressed down by circumstances until strangers mistook exhaustion for failure. A message appeared from Ben. Final rent notice posted at Dawson apartment. Evelyn was in the car 12 minutes later. Across the street, Luke stood on the second-floor landing with Grace beside him. A yellow notice was taped to the door. Grace looked up. "Do we have to move?" Luke removed the notice carefully. "It means I need to talk to Mr. Brennan. Can we take the tree?" "Of course." "And Mom's picture?" Luke folded the notice. "First thing I pack." The landlord waited at the bottom of the stairs. "I cannot carry this anymore, Luke. I get paid Friday. You said that last month. Grace had the clinic. Everyone has something." Luke looked toward his daughter. "Give me until Monday." The landlord exhaled. 3 days. Luke nodded. Thank you. Evelyn reached for the car door. Then Luke's words returned to her. Help people without making them stand beneath a light and explain why they deserve it. Her hand fell away from the handle. Luke walked Grace toward the truck. He carried the notice in one pocket and her backpack over one shoulder. He never looked toward Evelyn's car. High above the city, Marcus watched the hotel security footage. Luke entered the lobby. Luke placed the wallet on the desk. Luke left. Marcus paused the image on his face. Then he opened a private report and began to type. Possible access to confidential financial material. Suspicious handling of executive property. Subject has significant financial motive. Marcus attached Luke's debt records. He sent the report to corporate security. Then he forwarded it to a police contact. On another screen, Grace Dawson's medical application remained frozen beneath his authorization. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You should have taken the money, Marcus said. At the Harbor Light Diner, Luke stood behind the open freezer with both sleeves rolled above his elbows. A screwdriver rested between his teeth. One hand held a loose wire while the other tested the damaged connection. Ruth watched from the kitchen doorway. If you electrocute yourself, I am not paying for the funeral. Luke removed the screwdriver from his mouth. That is comforting. I will bring pie. Tuesday's pie, you are getting nothing. Grace sat in a booth near the window with her school books spread across the table. She wore her winter coat indoors and colored the border of a spelling worksheet with a purple crayon. Luke glanced at her every few seconds. Her breathing was steady. That was enough for now. The freezer motor hummed, coughed, and came back to life. Ruth clapped once. Grace raised both hands. He fixed it. Luke bowed with the screwdriver. Years of advanced training. You use tape, Grace said. Advanced tape. The bell above the front door rang. 2 police officers entered with a man wearing a Hartwell security badge clipped to his coat. The diner changed one table at a time. A fork paused above a plate. The radio near the kitchen suddenly seemed too loud. Ruth stepped from behind the counter. Can I help you? The taller officer looked past her. Luke Dawson. Luke set the screwdriver on the counter. That is me. Grace slid out of the booth. The security manager opened a folder. We need to ask Mr. Dawson several questions regarding executive property recovered at the Crown Meridian Hotel. Ruth's expression hardened. He returned that wallet. The officer looked at Luke. Did you open it? Yes. Did you remove a silver storage device? No. Did you connect that device to a computer or any other equipment? No. The security manager stepped closer. The drive contained confidential financial material. Luke looked at him. I never touched it. Can you prove that? The question settled over the room. Luke's eyes moved toward Grace. She had gone very still. My dad does not steal, she said. Luke crossed the floor and knelt in front of her. Bug, look at me. Her eyes were already wet. They think you did something bad. They are asking questions. They are saying it in front of everybody. Luke took both her hands. People can be wrong. They are police. Police can ask questions and still be wrong. She looked toward the officers. Are they taking you? Luke glanced over his shoulder. The taller officer shifted his weight. We are not placing you under arrest, Mr. Dawson. We need a formal statement downtown. Luke looked back at Grace. Her fingers tightened around his. Then we stand taller, he said softly, not louder. A man near the window raised his phone. Luke saw the camera. So did Grace. Ruth moved between the phone and the child. Put that away. The man lowered it halfway, then lifted it again when the officers asked Luke to step outside. Luke removed his work gloves and folded them on the counter. Can she stay with you? Ruth's face softened. As long as she needs. Grace wrapped both arms around Luke's neck. No. He held her. His eyes closed for 1 second. Then he pulled back and pressed his forehead against hers. I am going to answer their questions. What if they do not believe you? Truth walks slower. That does not mean it gets there. Luke looked at her. It gets there. Grace searched his face. Promise, promise. He stood. The security manager held the door. Cold air entered the diner as Luke walked outside with the officers. Across the street, Evelyn's sedan stopped at the curb. She saw Luke beside the police car. She saw Grace through the diner window crying against Ruth's apron. Her phone vibrated. A message from Marcus appeared. Callaway situation handled. You are protected. Evelyn read it twice. Then she looked at Luke. His shoulders were straight, but his face had changed. The quiet dignity she had witnessed the night before was still there. Now it had been cornered. "Ben," she said. He watched the officers guide Luke into the back seat. "Yes, take me to security." Hartwell Tower rose above the city under a sky the color of steel. Evelyn crossed the lobby without removing her coat. Assistants stood as she passed. A legal director called her name. She entered the private elevator and pressed the button for the security floor. Ben stood beside her. "You think Marcus did this?" "I think Marcus wanted it done before I could ask why." The elevator opened. 3 men sat before a wall of monitors. The security supervisor rose so quickly that his chair struck the desk. "Ms. Hart, we were not expecting you, I know. Mr. Vale instructed us to route questions through his office." Evelyn removed the wallet from her coat and placed it on the desk. "Mr. Vale does not own this company." No one answered. "Show me every camera angle from level 3 last night, 11 o'clock through midnight." The supervisor looked toward another employee. "Some footage is under review." "Then review it." He began typing. The main garage feed appeared on the center monitor. At 11:15, the picture froze. The time code jumped forward 12 minutes. Evelyn looked at the supervisor. "Where is the missing footage? It may be a file transfer error. Maybe the archive was accessed this morning. By whom?" He hesitated. "Mr. Vale's administrative credentials." Ben stepped closer to the screens. "Show loading access stairwells, elevators, and traffic control." The supervisor opened several feeds. One camera showed the garage exit. Another faced a concrete ramp. A third displayed the service elevator. Nothing gave a direct view of Evelyn's car. Ben pointed toward the corner of one image. "What is that? A round traffic mirror hung above the exit lane. Its curved surface reflected a distorted section of level 3. The supervisor enlarged the frame. The image blurred. A figure entered from the stairwell wearing a dark coat. Evelyn leaned toward the monitor. Marcus walked across the reflected garage. He looked toward the empty security booth. Then he removed a black wallet from his coat and placed it beside the rear tire of Evelyn's town car. Not dropped, placed. The room went silent. The supervisor lowered his hands from the keyboard. Evelyn watched Marcus disappear into the stairwell. 3 minutes later, Luke entered the reflection carrying his toolbox. He noticed the wallet. He looked around. He picked it up. "Pull the elevator camera," Evelyn said. The next recording showed Luke standing alone beneath white fluorescent light. The wallet rested openly in both hands. He opened it only far enough to check the identification. He never touched the cash. He never removed the drive. He did not hide the wallet beneath his jacket. He simply waited for the elevator to reach the lobby. Evelyn watched the recording again. The second time, she did not study Luke. She studied the cameras, the empty booth, and the building that carried her name. "He told the truth," the supervisor said. Evelyn turned to him. "Withdraw the complaint. Legal may need to approve that. Withdraw it now." He reached for the phone. "Tell the police the chain of custody is confirmed. Tell them Mr. Dawson did not remove anything. Then preserve every file from last night. No one accesses this room without my written approval." The door opened. Marcus entered wearing a dark suit and a controlled expression. "Evelyn, I heard you came down here." She looked at the screen. His reflection remained frozen beside the town car. Marcus followed her gaze. Something moved behind his eyes. It disappeared quickly. "That angle is misleading. You placed my wallet beside the tire. It was a security test. Without telling me, you were carrying confidential material. I needed to determine whether staff would follow protocol. You selected a temporary contractor. I did not select anyone. You emptied the booth." Marcus glanced at the supervisor. The man looked down. Marcus turned back to Evelyn. "The test revealed exactly what I feared." Dawson opened the wallet. "To find my name. You cannot know that. I watched him. Video does not show what he intended." Evelyn stepped closer. "No, it shows what he did." Marcus's jaw tightened. He may have copied the drive. He never removed it. He may have used a wireless device. Ben gave him a long look. Luke's toolbox had carried pliers tape and a voltage tester. Marcus spoke faster. "He has debt, a sick child, a suspended professional license, every possible motive." Evelyn stared at him. "You collected all of that before reporting him. My job is to protect you. Your job is finance. When you are worth what you are worth, protection becomes finance. The word sounded polished. This time, Evelyn heard the rehearsal inside them. The supervisor covered the phone receiver. Police are releasing Mr. Dawson. Evelyn turned. We're downtown precinct. She picked up the wallet. Marcus reached toward it. I need the drive for the board review. Evelyn closed her hand around the leather. No. For the first time, Marcus stopped smiling. The police station entrance was crowded when Evelyn arrived. Someone had posted the diner video online. A local reporter stood near the steps with a camera operator. 2 people held phones toward the doors. Luke came outside wearing the same work jacket. No officer walked beside him now. No one apologized where the cameras could hear it. He saw Evelyn near the curb. His expression did not change. She opened the rear door of her sedan. You can leave through the garage. I can leave through the door I came in. The reporters are waiting. They already have what they wanted. Luke walked down the steps. Questions followed him. Mr. Dawson, did you steal the wallet? Were you trying to access Hartwell financial records? Did Miss Hart pay you to return it? Luke kept walking. Evelyn stepped between him and the nearest camera. The complaint has been withdrawn, she said. Mr. Dawson returned my property intact. He committed no crime. The reporters shifted toward her. Luke stopped near the car. Now they have you, he said. That is better than having you. He looked at her. No, it is easier for you. She absorbed the difference. Ben opened the car door again. Luke shook his head. Evelyn moved closer and lowered her voice. I saw the footage. Good. Marcus planted the wallet. Luke stared at her. The anger in his face became something quieter. You followed me because you thought I was lying. Yes. You watched me at the clinic. Yes. You watched my daughter ask if we had to move. Evelyn did not look away. Yes. And you went home. The reporters continued calling their names from the steps. Evelyn heard none of them. I did. Luke stepped closer. You had the power to ask one honest question. Instead, you watched me like something you were deciding whether to trust. You are right. The answer stopped him. He had expected an explanation, a defense, a reminder that she had helped clear his name. Evelyn offered none. I was wrong, she said. About you. About what I was entitled to know. About the people I trusted. Luke looked toward the street. My daughter saw officers take me away. I know. You do not know. His voice never rose. That video is already on phones at her school. My jobs are being canceled. My landlord saw it. Being cleared in your security office does not put anything back. Evelyn's eyes moved to his hands. He had folded them into fists inside his coat pockets. What can I do? Luke gave a tired laugh. You keep asking that after deciding what to do first. He walked away. Ben watched him cross the street. Evelyn remained beside the open car door. Her phone vibrated again. 3 missed calls from Marcus. A message from legal. A call from the board chairman. She ignored all of them. At the diner, Grace sat in the same booth with her backpack closed. Ruth placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. Grace did not touch them. When Luke entered, she ran to him. He lifted her. I told you I would come back. She buried her face in his shoulder. Did they say sorry? Luke looked at Ruth. No. Grace pulled back. Then they still think you did it. They know I did not. Everybody else does not. Luke had no answer. Ruth placed the folded work gloves on the counter. 3 clients called. Luke lowered Grace to the floor. What did they say? They saw the video. They are using someone else. Luke nodded as if she had told him the weather. His phone rang. The landlord. He let it ring twice before answering. Mr. Brennan had also seen the video. The 3-day extension was no longer guaranteed. Other tenants were nervous. The police presence had made the building look unsafe. Luke listened. Give me until tonight. The call ended. Grace watched his face. Are we moving? Luke looked toward the diner window. Rain had begun again. I do not know. At Hartwell Tower, Marcus entered Evelyn's office without knocking. She stood beside the windows holding the wallet. Legal needs the drive, he said. Legal can request it directly. It contains tomorrow's projections. Then send another copy. Marcus held out his hand. This is not the time to become sentimental. Evelyn did not move. Why did you plant the wallet? I told you, security testing. You selected a man with debt and a sick child. I selected a vulnerability. He is a person. He is a contractor. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You knew his name before he entered the lobby. Marcus said nothing. She removed the silver drive. His gaze followed it. The look lasted only a second. It was enough. You have no idea what is on that, he said. Then tell me. Marcus exhaled. Give it to me. No. He stepped closer. Evelyn placed the drive in her pocket. Ben appeared in the doorway. Marcus looked from him to Evelyn. Then he smiled again. I am trying to protect this company. Evelyn's voice remained quiet. Leave my office. Marcus turned and walked out. Ben followed at a distance. Evelyn waited 1 minute before moving. They reached the executive garage as Marcus crossed toward his car with his phone pressed to his ear. His voice echoed between the concrete pillars. Destroy the duplicate files. Now. Evelyn stopped. She took out her phone and pressed record. Marcus turned. The color left his face. He lowered his phone. Who are you speaking to? Evelyn asked. No one. You just ordered someone to destroy files. You misunderstood. Ben stepped beside her. Marcus looked toward the exit. A security vehicle moved across the lane. He smiled, but there was no warmth left in it. This is becoming irrational. Evelyn removed the drive from her pocket. No, this is becoming clear. Marcus took 1 step toward her. Ben moved between them. He did not raise his hands. He simply stood there. Marcus stopped. Evelyn returned to the elevator. Lock his system access, she told Ben, quietly, in a secure conference room. Evelyn connected the drive to an isolated computer with an independent cyber officer present. The first folder contained financial projections. The second contained vendor reserve accounts. The third required a password. The cyber officer used credentials embedded in an attached audit file. The folder opened. Hundreds of payments appeared. Construction vendors, medical supply companies, clinic maintenance contracts, emergency pediatric grants. Evelyn recognized the foundation account numbers. Money had moved from medical assistance reserves into companies with mailing addresses in empty office parks. Several vendors shared the same bank routing details. One file contained application holds, names, case numbers, treatment requests. Grace Dawson appeared halfway down the page. Respiratory medication. Urgent. Status delayed by finance. Evelyn pressed her fingers against the table. The room seemed to narrow around the screen. How much, she asked. The cyber officer searched the total transfers. From these accounts alone, more than $18 million. Evelyn looked at Grace's case number again. A child had gone without medicine because someone had needed the money to remain unexamined. She printed the records. Then she drove to Luke's apartment. No security team, no assistant, no envelope of cash. Luke opened the door but did not invite her inside. Grace slept on the couch beneath a blanket. Her rescue inhaler rested on the table beside her. Evelyn held out the documents. I know why her application was delayed. Luke looked at the first page, then the second. His eyes stopped on Grace's case number. What is this? Money was taken from the foundation. By Marcus. We are still confirming everything. Luke read the payment summaries. His breathing changed. How many children we do not know. You run the foundation. I know. He looked at her. No, you keep saying that after the damage is done. Evelyn accepted the words. Luke returned to the papers. One page showed invoices for pediatric clinic construction projects. His expression shifted. The anger remained, but something more precise moved beneath it. He carried the documents to the kitchen table. Evelyn stepped inside only when he left the doorway open. Luke placed 2 invoices beside each other. He traced the specifications with one finger. This beam size is wrong. Evelyn leaned over the table. What do you mean this clinic has a concrete frame? They build for structural steel. He turned another page. And this foundation depth would not support a 2-story medical wing. Could it be a billing error? Luke looked at the company name, then at the listed project address. He entered the address into his phone. A satellite image appeared. An empty lot sat between a warehouse and a chain-link fence. Luke held the screen toward her. This invoice says the wing was completed 6 months ago. Evelyn stared at the vacant ground. Luke placed both palms on the table. These are not only false accounts. He looked at the pages spread between them. They are buildings that were never built. Luke's words remained above the kitchen table. Rain tapped the apartment window. Grace slept on the couch beneath a faded quilt, one hand resting beside her inhaler. The room smelled of tomato soup, old wood, and the cold air slipping through the frame Luke had patched twice. Evelyn looked from the empty lot on his phone to the invoices spread across the table. How can you be certain Luke placed 2 pages side by side? This document claims the clinic used a structural steel frame. The permit says reinforced concrete. Both cannot be true. He pointed to the next page. This contractor billed for 86 steel columns, but the clinic has 1 floor. Even if they had used steel, they would not need half that number. Evelyn leaned closer. Could the invoices belong to another project? The address is printed on every page. Luke turned another invoice toward her. This one claims a pediatric recovery wing was completed in Tacoma. He searched the address. A photograph appeared on the screen. A closed gas station stood behind a chain-link fence. Evelyn stared at it. How many are there? I have only seen 6 pages. There are hundreds. Luke looked toward Grace. Then hundreds need to be checked. Evelyn gathered the documents. I can take these to the board. Luke shook his head. Marcus will say the invoices are accounting mistakes. They are evidence. They are paper. He controls the people who explain what the paper means. Evelyn stopped. Luke's eyes were fixed on Grace's case number. What do you need? She asked. He looked at her. You keep asking me that. This time I am listening before I decide. Luke sat at the table. The anger in his face had settled into focus. I need the complete vendor list. Construction permits, inspection records, payment dates. Every clinic connected to these companies. I can get them. And I want an independent auditor. I will call one. Not someone who works for Hartwell. Evelyn nodded. Luke folded Grace's application and placed it apart from the other papers. No photographs of her, no reporters, no story about the poor father who returned your money. There will be none. Every family gets contacted, yes. Not only the families that make good photographs. Evelyn met his eyes. Every family. Luke studied her for a long moment. Then I will look at the records. Grace coughed in her sleep. Luke crossed the room immediately. He checked her breathing, adjusted the quilt, and waited until her chest moved evenly again. Evelyn watched him. There was no hesitation in his care, no moment in which he considered whether the task was inconvenient. His attention simply belonged to his daughter. When he returned to the table, Evelyn had placed the papers in order. Luke noticed. You organize things when you are afraid. She looked up. What makes you think I am afraid people who are not afraid do not arrange invoices by date at 1 a.m? For the first time that night, the corner of her mouth moved. You observe too much. I used to be paid for it. Evelyn took out her phone. Ben can bring the rest of the files. Luke glanced at Grace. Not here. Where, he thought for a moment. The diner closes at 10. At 10:30, the Harbor Light Diner was dark except for the kitchen lights and 1 lamp above the back booth. Ruth unlocked the door and looked at the boxes Ben carried inside. What are those accounting records? Evelyn said. Ruth looked at Luke. You brought accounting into my diner. We needed coffee. That explains nothing. Ben set the boxes beside the booth. An independent forensic auditor named Daniel Price arrived 10 minutes later. He was a quiet man with silver glasses and a leather case worn at the corners. He had worked with Ben years earlier on a public corruption investigation. Daniel opened the first ledger. No one at Hartwell knows I am here. Only the 4 of us, Evelyn said. Ruth placed a coffee pot on the table. 5. Evelyn looked at her. Ruth folded her arms. My diner. My count. Luke sat across from Daniel and opened the construction records. For the first hour, the work moved slowly. Invoice numbers, vendor addresses, building permits, inspection dates. Luke made columns on a yellow legal pad. He compared structural descriptions with public records and photographs. Daniel followed the money. Evelyn searched internal approvals. Ben stood near the door watching the street. At midnight, Luke found the first repeated serial number. The same steel shipment had been billed to clinics in Seattle, Tacoma, and Spokane. Daniel checked the dates. All 3 payments cleared within 2 days. Evelyn opened the vendor registration. The company address belonged to a mailbox rental center in Delaware. Luke found another invoice. The same engineer had approved construction in 2 cities on the same morning. "There is no engineer with this license number," he said. Daniel searched the state database. "He does not exist." Evelyn sat back. How did no one see this? Daniel removed his glasses. Someone probably did. The answer brought Melissa Grant back to Evelyn's mind. She called the analyst. The phone went directly to voicemail. Evelyn tried again. Nothing. Luke watched her. "Who is she?" "An analyst who tried to speak to me yesterday. And you let Marcus stop her." Evelyn looked down at the phone. "Yes." Luke returned to the invoices. He did not soften the truth for her. At 12:40, Ben received a message. "Melissa is safe," he said. "She is at her sister's house in Bellevue." Evelyn exhaled. "Can she talk?" "She says Marcus threatened legal action if she attended the board meeting." Daniel looked toward Evelyn. "You need her records. She may lose her career. She may already believe she has." Evelyn called again. This time Melissa answered. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Ms. Hart, I am sorry." Silence followed. Evelyn continued. "You tried to warn me. I allowed Marcus to stop you." Melissa began to cry quietly. "I copied everything I could before they removed my access. Do you still have it?" "Yes. Ben will come to you. You are not required to return to Hartwell tonight. What happens tomorrow?" Evelyn looked at Luke, Daniel, and the records covering the table. "Tomorrow you tell the truth in whatever way feels safe. I will not ask you to stand alone." After the call ended, Luke slid a cup of coffee toward Evelyn. It had gone cold. She drank it anyway. At 2 in the morning, Ben and Daniel left to collect Melissa's files and archived permits from a county records office. Ruth went upstairs to sleep in the small apartment above the diner. Luke and Evelyn remained in the booth. The silence between them was no longer hostile. It was tired. Snow had begun to mix with the rain outside. Evelyn turned another page. This clinic received $3 million for an expansion. Luke studied the plans. There was an expansion. Then the invoice may be legitimate. No. He pointed to the foundation drawing. The retaining wall was already failing before construction. They billed for a complete replacement, but the inspection photographs show the original wall. How can you tell Luke traced a crack in the image? Same fracture pattern. Evelyn looked at him. You remember things like that. I remember structures. What failed, what held, where the weight went. He lowered the photograph. For a long time, that was my entire life. Evelyn glanced at the old newspaper clipping he had brought with his notes. What happened after the accident? Luke's hand stopped. He looked through the diner window. Snow gathered along the curb. Rachel died before I reached the hospital. Evelyn waited. Luke continued without looking at her. Grace had 3 surgeries in the first year. I kept thinking I could return to work when the next appointment ended. Then there was another appointment. He turned the coffee cup slowly. My company gave me time, then they gave me warnings, then they gave me a choice, your job or your daughter. They did not say it that way. They did not have to. Luke's jaw tightened. I sold the house, let the license expire, took repair jobs because no one cares if a maintenance man leaves at noon for a clinic. He looked toward the photograph of Rachel. For a while I thought surviving the accident meant we had won. Evelyn's voice softened. What changed? The bills arrived. She did not tell him that everything would be all right. She did not offer money. She sat beside him in the quiet diner and let the answer remain difficult. After a while, Luke asked, How did you not know Evelyn looked at the Hartwell documents? My father built the company. Luke waited. He believed generosity was wasted unless someone photographed it. Every donation had a podium. Every child had to smile beside a check. You hated that. I thought I did. She folded her hands. When I became CEO, I stopped attending most foundation events. I told myself I was removing the performance, but you stopped looking at the work. Yes. Marcus looked for you. Yes. Evelyn's eyes shone, but her voice remained steady. I gave him control because he made every difficult decision disappear before it reached my desk. Luke looked at her. And now I know where they went. Evelyn leaned back against the booth. The exhaustion she had held away all night finally reached her face. Luke returned to the plans. Several minutes later, he noticed she had fallen asleep. Her head rested against the wall. One hand remained beside an open ledger. Luke watched her for a moment. Without the tailored coat, the office, and the people waiting for instructions, she looked younger. Not fragile, simply unguarded. He removed his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. Evelyn woke as he stepped away. "You should sleep," she said. "So should you. I own a bed, I remember. Glass walls, too many rooms." Her eyes narrowed with faint amusement. "You noticed a great deal while being accused of theft. I am observant under pressure." She pulled his jacket closer. "It smells like machine oil. That is the expensive version." Evelyn smiled. Luke did too. Their eyes held. The diner seemed suddenly smaller. Luke looked at her mouth, then away. Grace's inhaler sat in his coat pocket beneath Evelyn's hand. The reminder returned both of them to the table. At 3:15, Ben came back with Melissa and 2 storage drives. Melissa stopped when she saw Evelyn. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Evelyn stood. "I should have listened." Melissa nodded once. She did not forgive her. She opened her laptop. The files contained emails, deleted payment schedules, and internal instructions from Marcus. Delay emergency grants, move unused reserves, approve vendor transfers before month end. One message referred to the medical requests as emotional liabilities. Grace's application appeared in a spreadsheet beside dozens of other children. Daniel returned with archived permits and began matching names. By dawn, they had enough to show a pattern. By 7, they had enough to prove intent. At 8:30, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. He did not know Evelyn had the files. He believed he still controlled the story. The boardroom on the 41st floor had been designed to make people feel larger than the city below. 12 directors sat around the walnut table. Marcus stood near the screen. A still image from the diner video showed Luke walking beside the police. Marcus spoke calmly. This man had access to executive property, confidential data, and hotel systems. Ms. Hart's personal involvement has compromised our response. One board member looked toward the empty chair at the head of the table. "Where is Evelyn?" Marcus adjusted his cuff. "She has allowed sympathy to interfere with corporate judgment." The doors opened. Evelyn entered. Ben followed. Then Luke stepped into the room wearing his work jacket. Every eye moved toward his boots. Marcus almost smiled. "Thank you for joining us." Evelyn placed the black wallet in the center of the table. "Did you finish?" Marcus blinked. "Finish what? Lying?" No one moved. Evelyn looked toward the screen. "Play the garage footage." The lights dimmed. Marcus appeared in the curved reflection of the traffic mirror. He entered the garage, checked the security booth, and placed the wallet beside the town car. A board member leaned forward. Marcus raised one hand. "This was an authorized security test." "Authorized by whom?" Evelyn asked. "As chief financial officer, I have discretion regarding executive risk. Keep playing." Luke appeared. He picked up the wallet. The elevator footage showed him holding it openly, never touching the cash or the drive. Evelyn paused the image on his hands. "This man returned every dollar, every card, and every file." Marcus laughed softly. "You cannot prove he did not copy the drive." Evelyn nodded to Ben. Marcus's recorded voice filled the room. "Destroy the duplicate files. Now." The boardroom became still. Marcus's face tightened. "That recording lacks context." Luke placed 2 invoices on the table. "Then we can discuss context." Marcus looked at him. Luke connected his laptop to the screen. A construction drawing appeared. "This invoice claims the foundation paid for a pediatric wing at this address." He changed the image. An empty lot appeared. "There is no wing." He opened another file. "This clinic was built for 86 structural steel columns. The building is reinforced concrete." A director frowned. "How do you know Luke drew a simple frame on the screen?" "Because steel and concrete carry weight differently. The permit inspection records and photographs all confirm the same structure. The vendor billed for material that never entered the building." Daniel distributed a summary. Luke continued. "The same shipment number appears at 3 clinics. The same engineer approved work in 2 cities at the same time. That engineer does not exist." Marcus turned toward the board. "He is a maintenance contractor, not an auditor." Luke looked at him. "I was a structural engineer." Marcus's expression shifted. Luke opened another image. "And you chose me because you never bothered to find out." Melissa entered through the side door. Marcus went pale. She placed her records before the board. These approvals came directly from Mr. Vale's office. Marcus pointed at her. She copied restricted files. She preserved evidence, Evelyn said. He turned on Evelyn. You are destroying this company for a stranger. No. She stood at the head of the table. You stole from children. You framed an innocent father. You used my trust to hide both. Marcus looked around the room. No one met his eyes. Evelyn continued. You committed the theft. I allowed one man to control the information reaching this board. That failure belongs to me. A director shifted. Evelyn, this is not the time to assign personal blame. It is exactly the time. She placed a written resolution on the table. Marcus Vale is suspended effective immediately. All records will be delivered to federal investigators. An independent forensic audit begins today. Marcus stepped back. You cannot do this without a vote. The board chairman looked at the evidence. We can suspend you pending investigation, Evelyn continued. Emergency medical requests will be released through a protected reserve. My annual bonus will be transferred into that reserve. An outside committee will review the foundation and my conduct as chief executive. Luke looked at her. This was not money placed beneath a diner plate. She was not buying forgiveness. She was accepting consequence. Marcus gathered his phone. This company will collapse without me. No one stopped him as he walked toward the doors. Ben received a message and looked at Evelyn. He is heading to the garage. They followed. Marcus reached his car before security arrived. The engine started. The exit gate began to rise. Luke stepped near the lane. Marcus lowered the window. Move. Luke remained where he was. You think she sees you as an equal? Luke looked toward Evelyn, approaching with 2 investigators. No. Marcus smiled. Luke stepped aside as the gate lowered again. But I think she is learning how. The officers surrounded the car. Marcus struck the steering wheel once. His door opened. No one shouted. No one needed to. When the investigators took him away, Evelyn and Luke returned to the empty boardroom. The city stretched beyond the windows. Luke stood near the glass. Evelyn remained several feet behind him. The complaint against you will be withdrawn publicly. That does not erase the video. No. She moved beside him, but the truth will be public too. Luke looked down at the streets below. Truth walks slower. Evelyn remembered Grace's face at the diner. But it gets there. Luke turned toward her. For the first time since the hotel lobby, he looked at Evelyn without suspicion hardening his eyes. She reached toward his hand, then stopped. Luke closed the distance himself. Their fingers met between them. Neither spoke. After a moment, Luke asked the only question that still mattered. When does Grace get her medicine? Evelyn held his hand a little tighter. Today. Luke held Evelyn's hand for one more second. Then the boardroom doors opened, and the world returned. Attorneys entered carrying folders. Federal investigators waited in the hall. Board members gathered in small groups, speaking in voices too low to sound frightened. Phones rang across the executive floor as assistants tried to understand how a morning meeting had become a criminal investigation. Luke released Evelyn's hand. The warmth of it remained in his palm. A woman from Hartwell's legal department approached them. Ms. Hart, investigators need your statement. Evelyn nodded. Arrange the emergency authorization first. The attorney glanced at Luke. For the medication, for every urgent request, Marcus delayed. That may require several approvals. Then collect them. Some board members have already left. Call them back. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. The attorney hurried away. Luke looked toward the windows. How long will approval take? Evelyn checked the time. It is 11:20. That is not an answer. No. She put her phone on the table and called the foundation's medical director. Luke listened as she explained that Marcus's authority had been suspended and all urgent applications needed immediate review by an independent medical panel. She did not mention Luke. She did not mention the wallet. She did not ask that Grace be placed first. When the call ended, Evelyn looked at him. The panel will review the respiratory cases immediately. How many? 14? Luke's eyes closed briefly. 14 children. 14 families waiting beside phones, counting doses, reading the same letters, and hearing the same careful apologies. Grace had not been alone. That knowledge did not make the burden lighter. It made the room feel smaller. Ben entered with Luke's toolbox. You left this in the conference room downstairs. Luke took it. Thank you. Ben looked toward Evelyn. Investigators are ready. Evelyn nodded, but her attention remained on Luke. Ben can drive you to the clinic. I have my truck. It is still at the diner. Luke had forgotten. His entire life had been divided into before the police entered the diner and after. Evelyn picked up the black wallet from the boardroom table. For a moment, neither of them looked at the money inside. "I will meet you at the clinic," she said. Luke shook his head. "You have statements to give. I can come afterward. Grace does not need a room full of people. I would not bring anyone." He studied her. The old instinct to refuse appeared in his face. Then he looked toward the legal teams gathering beyond the glass. Afterward, he said. Evelyn gave a small nod. Luke left with Ben. The elevator descended through 40 floors of polished stone private offices and names engraved on doors. Neither man spoke until they reached the garage. Ben opened the passenger door of the sedan. Luke stopped. "You do not have to drive me, I know." Luke looked at him. Ben rested one hand on the roof. That woman has spent most of her life surrounded by people who say yes before she finishes a sentence. Luke placed his toolbox in the back. "I noticed. You did not." "No." Ben smiled faintly. "That may be why she listens when you speak." Luke got into the car. Seattle moved outside the windows beneath a pale winter sun. The rain had stopped, but water still shone along the streets. Luke checked his phone. 6 missed calls from Ruth, 3 from the clinic, 1 from Grace's school. He called Ruth first. She answered before the first ring ended. "Where are you?" "On the way to the clinic. Are you all right?" "Yes." "That was too fast. Try again." Luke looked through the windshield. "I do not know." Ruth became quiet. "Grace is with me. She keeps asking whether you are coming. Tell her 10 minutes. I already told her 5. Luke almost smiled. "Then tell her traffic is a criminal enterprise." Ruth's voice softened. She heard about the complaint being withdrawn. How people enjoy bad news quickly and corrections slowly. Luke closed his eyes. "I should have kept her away from all of this. You kept her fed, warm, and breathing. Stop accusing yourself of not controlling the entire world." Ben glanced at him in the mirror. Luke looked away. The clinic waiting room was fuller than it had been the night before. A father walked in circles with a sleeping boy against his chest. An older woman argued quietly with an insurance representative on the phone. A mother filled out forms while her daughter leaned against her shoulder. Luke entered carrying his toolbox. Grace ran toward him. He knelt and caught her before she reached full speed. Her arms locked around his neck. "You came." "I promised." She pulled back and touched his face. "Did they say sorry? Some of them did." "All of them, no." Grace considered that. Ruth said grown people are bad at saying sorry. Behind her, Ruth folded her arms. "I said some grown people. You meant most." Luke stood and looked at the clinic desk. Dr. Maya Chen approached with a tablet in her hands. "Mr. Dawson." Her expression was different from the night before. Not relief, urgency. "The foundation contacted us. Grace's medication has been approved." Luke looked at her. "For this month, for the full treatment period currently prescribed." His mouth opened. No sound came. Dr. Chen continued. "The pharmacy is preparing the first dose now. They are also reviewing every urgent application affected by the delay." Luke glanced around the waiting room. "Today that is what they told us." Grace tugged his sleeve. "Does that mean I get the new medicine?" Luke looked down at her. "Yes." She smiled. The smile reached him slowly. His shoulders lowered as though he had been carrying something too long and was afraid to set it down. Grace looked at Ruth. "Does this mean Dad stops counting the inhaler?" Ruth's eyes filled. "I doubt your father will ever stop counting anything." Luke turned toward the window. He pressed his lips together and took one careful breath. Grace slipped her hand into his. "You can cry." "I am not crying. You look like the sink when it leaks." Luke laughed once. The sound broke. He knelt again and pulled her against him. Grace rested her chin on his shoulder. "It is okay," she whispered. "I am not scared." Luke closed his eyes. "I am." Dr. Chen looked away to give them privacy. Ruth did the same. At 12:40, the medication arrived in a plain white pharmacy bag. There was no camera, no giant ceremonial check, no company logo beside Grace's face. Luke sat with Dr. Chen while she explained the dosage, possible reactions, and the schedule for follow-up tests. He asked every question twice. Grace sat on the examination table, swinging her feet. Will it taste bad? Dr. Chen smiled. Probably. Why does good medicine always taste bad? Luke placed the first measured dose in a cup. To make sure children appreciate soup, that is not science. It is advanced parenting. Grace took the medicine and made a face. Luke handed her water. She swallowed. Nothing dramatic happened. No music rose. The room did not become brighter. Grace simply sat there breathing as she had before. Luke watched every movement of her chest. Dr. Chen placed a hand on his shoulder. It will take time, I know. The words came from habit. This time, they were true. Evelyn arrived at 1:30. She wore the same clothes from the board meeting. Her hair had loosened near her face. She carried no flowers, gifts, or cameras. She stopped at the examination room door. Luke saw her before Grace did. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he moved the empty chair beside the wall. Evelyn entered. Grace looked up. You are the wallet lady. Evelyn blinked. Luke closed his eyes. Grace. What she is. Evelyn sat. I suppose I am. Grace pointed toward the pharmacy bag. I got the medicine, I heard. Dad cried. I did not. Grace looked at Evelyn. He did. Evelyn glanced at Luke. I will believe the witness. Luke leaned against the wall. You came to support me and immediately joined the prosecution. Grace laughed. The sound loosened something in the room. Evelyn watched her breathe. Luke noticed the way Evelyn's fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. How many were approved, he asked. 7 so far. The others are being reviewed by physicians now. Why not all 14? Some required different specialists. I asked for explanations in writing. Luke nodded. He did not thank her yet. Evelyn understood. Grace held up her stuffed fox. He needed medicine too. What is wrong with him? Evelyn asked. Very serious fabric problems. Luke looked at the fox. I warned him about climbing furniture. Grace handed the toy to Evelyn. You can hold him. Evelyn accepted it with both hands. Luke watched a woman who had negotiated contracts worth hundreds of millions sit beside his daughter holding a worn stuffed animal by the waist. Grace reached for her coloring book. Do you like purple? I do now. Luke looked away before either of them saw the smile. That evening, Evelyn returned to Hartwell Tower. The investigators had sealed Marcus's office. Employees stood in doorways as she passed. Some looked afraid. Others looked relieved. Melissa waited outside Evelyn's office. She held a cardboard box containing the belongings from her desk. Evelyn stopped. Where are you going? Human Resources placed me on administrative leave. On whose instruction they said the copying of restricted files is still under review. Evelyn looked toward the legal director standing nearby. Reverse it. The director hesitated. Ms. Grant did violate data policy. She preserved evidence of a crime. There still needs to be a process. Then the process begins with paid protected leave and independent counsel. Melissa stared at her. Evelyn continued. No retaliation. No loss of benefits. No contact from anyone connected to Marcus. The legal director nodded. Melissa held the box more tightly. I do not know whether I want to come back. You do not have to decide today. Evelyn looked at the box. But you will not leave because we punished you for telling the truth. Melissa's eyes filled. She nodded once. Evelyn entered her office alone. The city lights spread across the windows. Her father's portrait hung above a shelf near the door. He stood beside the opening of the first Hartwell Hotel, one hand raised to a crowd. Evelyn had always believed the portrait represented achievement. Now she saw the people outside the frame, workers, families, donors, anyone whose name had been smaller than his. She removed the portrait from the wall and placed it face down against the shelf. Her phone rang. Luke's name appeared. She answered immediately. Is Grace all right? Yes. Evelyn sat. What happened? Nothing. She ate soup and complained about it. Then why are you calling? Luke was silent for a moment. The clinic said 7 applications were approved. Yes. I wanted to know whether the other families had been contacted. They are being called tonight. By whom? Clinic social workers, not Hartwell Public Relations. Another silence. Good, Luke said. Evelyn looked at the black wallet on her desk. Luke. Yes, I am sorry. You already said that. I know. I had more to be sorry for. He did not rescue her from the discomfort. She continued. I let Marcus control the foundation. I signed reports I should have questioned. I believed efficiency was the same as competence because it made my life easier. Outside her office, people moved through the corridor. Evelyn lowered her voice. I did not know your daughter's name until I followed you. I should have known there were children waiting long before one of their fathers returned my wallet. Luke breathed quietly on the other end. What happens now? An independent audit, temporary medical authorization, a review of every vendor and application. The board will decide whether I remain CEO. You offered your bonus. It is not enough. No. The answer was direct. Evelyn appreciated it. Luke continued. But it is a start. 3 days later, Marcus Vale appeared before a federal judge. The initial charges included wire fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of an investigation, and filing a false report. Reporters gathered outside the courthouse. Marcus's attorney described him as a respected executive and warned against public judgment before trial. No one mentioned Luke by name during the hearing. The diner video continued to circulate anyway. Some copies included Evelyn's statement clearing him. Others ended before she arrived. One headline called him the $40,000 handyman. Another called him the father who refused a fortune. Luke hated both. He returned to the Harbor Light Diner early Monday morning and found 3 reporters waiting outside. Ruth locked the door behind him. They offered me $5,000 for an interview. Luke set down his toolbox. What did you say I asked for 10? He stared at her. Ruth held the expression for 3 seconds. Then she smiled. I told them to leave. Grace sat at the counter eating toast. One reporter pressed a card against the window. Luke turned his back. They will get bored, Ruth said. When someone wealthier behaves worse. Grace looked at the reporters. Are they here because Dad is famous? He is not famous, Luke said. Ruth poured coffee. He is briefly inconvenient to strangers. Luke's phone rang. Mr. Brennan. The landlord wanted to speak upstairs. Luke found him beside the apartment door holding a folder. I received a call from a tenant assistance group, Brennan said. Luke's face hardened. I did not apply for anything. They are helping the entire building. What group? Rainier Winter Housing Partnership. Luke opened the folder. The program offered temporary rent stabilization to tenants facing eviction due to medical debt, reduced work, or seasonal hardship. Every resident in the building had received the same notice. Brennan tapped the page. They covered part of what you owe. You still need a payment plan for the rest. Luke looked toward the stairs. Who funded it? City money, non-profit money, private donations? I do not know. Luke knew, or believed he did. That afternoon he called Evelyn. Did you pay my rent? No. Did Hartwell contributed to a citywide winter program. You created it in 3 days. The nonprofit already existed. We expanded its funding. How many buildings? 23 so far. Luke walked beside his truck. You could have told me. You told me not to put a spotlight on someone's shame. That does not mean move money around me without asking. You are right. The immediate agreement disarmed him. Evelyn continued. The program uses the same eligibility rules for everyone. Hartwell does not know which tenants receive assistance. I asked to remain outside the selection process. Luke looked at the building. A woman from the first floor stood beside the mailbox reading the same notice. Her 2 boys waited beside her. Her hand covered her mouth. Luke's anger changed shape. I still owe part of the rent. Yes, good. Evelyn laughed softly. You are the only person I know who sounds relieved to owe money. I know how to owe money. Apparently. Luke leaned against the truck. Thank you. It was the first time he had said it directly. Evelyn became quiet. You are welcome. 2 weeks passed. Grace's breathing improved slowly. The first few nights, Luke slept in a chair beside her bed and woke whenever she shifted. The 3rd week, she walked from the apartment to the diner without asking to be carried. At the corner, she stopped. Luke reached for the inhaler. Grace held up one finger. Wait. She took a deep breath, then another. No cough came. Her eyes widened. Luke knelt. How do you feel? Normal? He smiled. What does normal feel like? I do not know. She ran the last few steps toward the diner. Luke followed at a walk. Inside, Ruth had replaced the old freezer. The new machine shone beneath the kitchen lights. Luke opened the door. This is not the same freezer. Ruth kept wiping the counter. It grew. Freezers do not grow. Children do. Why are appliances different? A certificate hung beside the register. Harbor Light Diner, Community Infrastructure Grant recipient. Luke looked at Ruth. You applied, I am capable of filling out forms. You hate forms. I hate broken freezers more. Grace pressed her face against the new door. It has lights inside. Ruth leaned toward Luke. The grant went to 30 businesses. I checked. Luke looked at her. You checked because you knew I would. I checked because your face becomes exhausting when you suspect charity. Luke examined the certificate again. The application had been evaluated by an outside small business association. Evelyn's name appeared nowhere. He smiled despite himself. 3 months after the wallet was returned, spring began reaching Seattle. The federal audit had identified $24 million in fraudulent transfers. Some money had been recovered from frozen accounts. Other funds were still being traced. Marcus remained in custody awaiting trial after investigators argued that he had attempted to destroy evidence. 2 other executives were charged. 3 board members resigned. Evelyn kept her position after an independent review, but the company adopted new controls. No single executive could approve vendor payments and medical holds. Emergency cases were reviewed by physicians and social workers. Foundation records were published quarterly. Parents' clinic representatives and outside auditors received permanent seats on the oversight board. Evelyn's annual bonus entered the emergency reserve. She also sold a company aircraft her father had purchased and transferred the proceeds into the same fund. Luke learned about the sale from a newspaper. He called her. You sold a plane, I disliked it. You flew in it last year. I disliked it at altitude. That is usually where planes are. Evelyn laughed. The sound had become familiar. They spoke several times a week. At first the calls concerned the investigation, then Grace's treatment, then smaller things. A leaking roof at one of the clinics. A diner pie Ruth claimed was fresh. Whether purple was an acceptable color for an office wall. Neither called the conversations dates. Grace did. One afternoon, Luke arrived at Hartwell Tower for a meeting with the Independent Facilities Committee. He wore a clean blue shirt beneath his work jacket. At reception, the security guard recognized him. The man stood. Mr. Dawson. Luke stopped. The guard had been in the hotel lobby the night of the wallet. I owe you an apology, the guard said. Luke looked around. No one held a camera. No one had asked the man to speak. You were doing your job, Luke said. I decided what kind of man you were before you said 10 words. Luke considered him. So did a lot of people. I am sorry. Luke nodded. Thank you. He entered the elevator. On the 41st floor, Evelyn waited beside the conference room. She wore a light gray suit and held 2 cups of coffee. One has sugar, she said. I do not use sugar. I know. That one is mine. She handed him the black coffee. Luke looked at the closed conference room doors. What is this meeting, an interview? He stopped. For what, Director of Community Infrastructure and Safety? No, you have not heard the description. I do not need a new title created because I helped you. It was not created for you. Evelyn opened the folder in her hand. The foundation manages clinics, community centers, housing projects, and small business programs. Marcus used construction fraud because no one with technical experience reviewed the vendors. Luke did not take the folder. You want me to watch invoices? I want someone to inspect projects, review bids, verify safety records, and ask questions executives avoid. I am not licensed. The position requires experience. Hartwell will pay for the courses and examination if the selected candidate chooses to renew certification. Selected candidate? Yes. Luke looked at her. You already selected me. No. She opened the conference room door. Daniel Price sat beside 2 engineers, a clinic director, and an outside human resources consultant. Evelyn lowered her voice. I am not on the panel. Luke glanced inside. You arranged the interview. I arranged the opportunity. That sounds carefully different. It is. He took the folder. What happens if they do not hire me? Then they do not hire you. And if they do, you will report to the oversight committee, not to me. Luke looked almost disappointed. Evelyn noticed. Professionally, she added. He met her eyes. The space between them held the memory of the diner, the boardroom, and the moment their hands had met. Luke entered the interview. It lasted 90 minutes. The panel asked about his expired license, his years away from engineering, and the limitations of his recent work history. Luke answered without hiding. He explained that he had left his firm to care for Grace. He described the repairs he had completed in aging apartment buildings and small businesses. One engineer asked how maintenance work qualified him to oversee medical facilities. Luke leaned forward. People notice a building when it is new. Maintenance teaches you what happens when attention leaves. The clinic director wrote something down. Luke continued. A loose railing does not care whether the original project had a ribbon cutting. A failed heater does not care how good the annual report looks. Safety is what remains after everyone important goes home. When the interview ended, Evelyn waited near the elevators. How did it go? They asked difficult questions. That is usually the purpose. I may have insulted ribbon cuttings. We can survive. A week later, Daniel delivered the offer letter to the diner. Evelyn was not present. Luke read all 8 pages while Ruth refilled his coffee twice. The salary was less than he had once earned as an engineer and more than he had made in any year since Rachel's death. The benefits included Grace's medical coverage. The position required regular site visits, technical training, and completion of his license renewal within 18 months. Luke read the final page again. Grace sat across from him, holding a purple pen. Are you going to sign? I am reading. You already read it. I am reading the parts between the words. There are no parts between words. That is where contracts hide things. Ruth placed the coffee pot down. Sign it before they discover you are impossible. Luke looked at Grace. What do you think? You would wear clean shirts more. That is not a benefit. You could build things again. Luke's eyes moved to the offer letter. He signed. That evening, Evelyn met him outside Rainier Children's Clinic. Construction fencing surrounded a damaged entrance ramp. Luke handed her a copy of the signed agreement. This is not charity, no. No special treatment. I was not allowed in the interview. No direct reporting to you, your panel insisted. Luke nodded. Good. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You could sound happier. I am trying to remain professionally mysterious. She laughed. Luke looked toward the clinic doors. I start Monday. I heard. They stood beside one another as patients entered beneath the temporary canopy. Evelyn placed her hands in her coat pockets. Would you have dinner with me? Luke turned. We have eaten together. Coffee in a closed diner during a fraud investigation does not qualify. Ruth served pie. It was from Tuesday. Luke smiled. Evelyn waited. He looked through the glass doors where Grace sat in the lobby reading with Dr. Chen. I need to be careful. With me, with everything. Evelyn nodded. I understand. That was not a refusal. She looked at him. No. Luke stepped closer. Dinner. When Friday. 7. Grace has to approve the restaurant. Of course. She is difficult. I know where she gets it. Friday dinner became another dinner. Then a walk beside Elliott Bay. Then coffee at a construction site where Luke informed Evelyn that her shoes were not suitable for wet concrete. She looked down at the dark leather boots she had purchased specifically for the visit. These cost more than your toolbox. That does not make them useful. They are waterproof. Luke pointed to the clean soles. They have never touched mud. Evelyn stepped directly into a shallow puddle. Water splashed against his trousers. Luke stared at her. Was that necessary? No. She walked ahead. Luke laughed and followed. Evelyn learned that Luke became quiet each year near the anniversary of Rachel's death. She did not ask him to stop missing his wife. Luke learned that Evelyn sometimes worked until midnight because returning to an empty penthouse felt worse than remaining in a bright office. He did not tell her to work less. He began bringing dinner. Grace started leaving drawings on Evelyn's desk. One showed Evelyn in a purple dress holding the black wallet. Another showed Luke with a toolbox twice the size of his body. A third showed all 3 of them beside the small Christmas tree, even though Christmas was months away. Evelyn framed that one. When spring became summer, Luke completed his first major inspection. A clinic contractor had proposed replacing an entire roof. Luke found that only one section required repair. The saved money funded 3 additional treatment rooms. At the board meeting, a director praised the cost reduction. Luke corrected him. The goal was not spending less. The director looked confused. The goal was fixing what was broken without pretending more work had been done. Evelyn watched from the opposite side of the table. Luke noticed the pride in her face. He tried not to smile. He failed. Grace's health continued to improve. There were difficult days. One medication caused headaches. A summer infection sent her back to the clinic for 2 nights. Luke slept in the chair beside her again. Evelyn arrived after midnight carrying coffee and a clean shirt for him. She did not ask whether she should stay. She sat near the window. At 3 in the morning, Grace slept. Luke looked at Evelyn beneath the dim hospital light. "You have a board meeting at 8. I know. You should go home." "I know." He smiled tiredly. "You enjoy that answer now. I learned it from you." Luke reached across the space between their chairs. Evelyn placed her hand in his. They sat that way until morning. By December, nearly a year had passed since the night Luke returned the wallet. Seattle filled with white lights and wet streets. The Harbor Light Diner displayed paper stars in every window. Grace had made most of them. Her school Christmas concert took place on a Thursday evening in a crowded auditorium that smelled of floor wax and winter coats. Luke arrived early and saved 2 seats. Ruth took one, the other remained empty until the lights dimmed. Evelyn entered alone. No assistant, no security. She removed her coat and sat beside Luke. "You came," he whispered. "You invited me. I was not certain CEOs attended second-grade concerts. We received special clearance." Grace walked onto the stage wearing silver wings and a crooked paper halo. She found Luke first, then Ruth, then Evelyn. Her smile widened. The children sang slightly different versions of the same song. One boy forgot every word. A girl waved at her family through the entire performance. Grace sang loudly even when the other children stopped. Afterward, she ran into the hallway. "You were both there." Luke lifted her. That was the arrangement. Grace looked at Evelyn. "Evelyn, are you coming tomorrow?" Evelyn glanced at Luke. "What is tomorrow Christmas Eve dinner?" Luke cleared his throat. "Grace was supposed to let me ask. She said you take too long." Evelyn smiled. "I would like to come." The apartment still had the same narrow kitchen and the same repaired heater. The tree was the same small tree, but its missing side faced the wall now. Paper stars covered every branch. Ruth brought pie. Ben arrived with a bottle of sparkling cider and stayed long enough for dinner. Evelyn brought nothing expensive. She carried a plain paper bag containing 3 books Grace had requested from the library, but could never keep long enough. Inside each cover, Evelyn had written Grace's name. Grace held them against her chest. "These are mine, they are, all the pages, all of them." After dinner, Ruth and Ben left together arguing about whether his parking had blocked the alley. Grace fell asleep on the couch beneath a blanket, one of the new books open across her chest. Luke carried her to bed. When he returned, Evelyn stood near the small tree. A photograph of Rachel remained on the shelf beside it. Evelyn looked at the picture. She had kind eyes. She did. Luke adjusted one of the paper stars. "For a long time I thought loving anyone again would mean I had stopped loving her." Evelyn turned toward him. "And now I think love does not replace anything." The apartment was quiet. Snow had begun falling beyond the window. Evelyn touched the edge of the tree. "I do not want you to feel that you owe me." Luke leaned against the table. "I do not." She looked at him. "That was fast. You made mistakes. I did. You took responsibility. I am trying. Those are separate things." Evelyn folded her arms. "And us?" Luke's expression changed. "There is an us I was hoping." He moved closer. "No money, no. No foundation, no. No job. You work for a committee that frequently disagrees with me." Luke smiled. "No rescue." Evelyn looked toward Grace's bedroom. "You did not need one." Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Luke raised one hand and touched her cheek. "Dinner was a reasonable place to start. It took you 11 months to decide that I am careful, I noticed." He kissed her. The kiss was quiet. No urgency, no debt, no audience. Evelyn rested one hand against his chest. Luke felt her smile before she stepped closer. A voice came from the hallway. "I knew it." They separated. Grace stood wrapped in a blanket with her hair falling across her face. Luke cleared his throat. "You are supposed to be asleep. I needed water. You are not holding a cup. I also needed to give her something." Grace opened her hand. A paper star rested in her palm. It was purple and gold with one side folded unevenly. Evelyn knelt. "What is it for your wallet?" "My wallet, so you do not lose it again." Luke covered his mouth with one hand. Evelyn laughed. The black wallet was inside her purse near the door. She took it out and opened it. The money was gone. The silver drive remained sealed in a federal evidence room. Her cards sat where they had always been. Evelyn placed Grace's star inside the empty inner pocket. Grace looked satisfied. "Now you will remember. Remember what Grace shrugged beneath the blanket. Where you found us." Luke looked at Evelyn, her eyes filled. She closed the wallet carefully. Grace slipped one hand into Luke's and the other into Evelyn's. They stepped onto the narrow porch. Snow covered the tire shop roof and softened the cracked pavement below. The city sounded farther away. Luke looked down at Grace. Her breathing remained even in the cold air. Evelyn leaned against his shoulder. Through the apartment window, 4 envelopes rested on the kitchen table. The labels had changed. Home, medicine, school, Christmas. None of them was empty. Grace squeezed their hands. "Do you think Santa knows this address?" Luke looked at Evelyn. She looked back at him. "I think he finally learned it," Luke said. Grace smiled. Evelyn placed the wallet inside her coat close to the paper star. Luke switched off the porch light. Together they returned to the warmth of the apartment while snow continued falling over Seattle.